We'll start in 1 minute. Today we'll continue with the practice final exam, the paper version. Remember the Newton practice final exam. You can take that up to 3 times, and you should take it because the real final exam is on Newton. So we'll pick up from where we left off last time. We're on problem 18. This one says, simplify, assuming variables represent positive numbers. So we have the square root of 20x to the second y times the square root of 8x to the sixth y to the second. So my suggestion is first apply the product property of radicals and write this as a single square root by multiplying the radicands. So the single square root, and then we'll multiply 20x squared y times 8x to the sixth y to the second. 20 times 8 is 160. X to the second times x to the sixth is x to the eighth. And then y times y to the second is y to the third. And then we'll just focus on simplifying this square root. So the largest factor of 160 that is a perfect square is 16. 16 times 10 is 160. X to the 8th is a perfect square because the exponent 8 is even. And y to the third, the largest factor of y to the third that's a perfect square is y to the second. So let's rewrite this as the square root of 16x to the 8th y to the second multiplied by the remaining factors, 10y. And then we compute the square root of the perfect squares. The square root of 16 is 4. The square root of x to the 8th is x to the 4th. The square root of y to the second is y. And then we multiply 4x to the 4th y times the square root of 10y. Okay, the next one is an absolute value inequality. Solve the inequality 5 plus the absolute value of 6 minus 2x is less than 11. First, we want the standard form. So we want to subtract 5 from both sides first. So we get the absolute value of 6 minus 2x is less than 6. Okay, if the absolute value of a number is less than 6, then that number has to be between -6 and +6. So the absolute value of 6 minus 2x is less than 6 implies that -6 is less than 6 minus 2x, which is less than +6. So if this is confusing, just remember what the definition of the absolute value is. The absolute value of a number is how far from zero it is on the number line. And think of 6 minus 2x as a number. It represents one number at a time. So if the absolute value of a number is less than 6, then the distance that number is from 0 cannot be more than 6. That means that number has to be between -6 and 6. Okay, we can solve this compound inequality. First, we'll subtract 6 from all three parts, and we'll get -12 is less than -2x, which is less than 0. Okay, the next part, we're solving for x, so we're going to divide each of the three parts by -2. But whenever we divide both sides of an inequality by a negative, you have to switch the inequality. So we'll do that. We'll divide each of the three parts by -2, but we'll also change each of those two less than symbols to greater than symbols. So -12 divided by -2 is +6. And we're switching the inequality to greater than. -2x divided by -2 is x. And even when we divide 0 by -2, we still switch the inequality to its opposite, even though 0 divided by -2 is still 0. Okay, so this is a perfectly fine way to write the solution. It might seem a little weird because normally we want the smaller number to the left. And we can do that. 6 greater than x, which is greater than 0, means the same thing as 0 is less than x, which is less than 6. So either of those is okay for the algebraic notation. The interval notation does have to be in a certain order, though. So the interval notation is parenthesis 0, comma 6 parenthesis. And either of the other two, those are each one of those is satisfactory for the algebraic notation. Okay, the next problem, number 20. The hypotenuse of a right triangle is 3 times the length of one of the legs. The length of the other leg is 128 feet. Find the lengths of the leg and the hypotenuse. And this one says round your answers to 2 decimal places. So we can draw a right triangle if it helps. So let's refer to one of the legs as being x feet. And the second leg is given to be 128 feet. And the hypotenuse, we're told, is 3 times the length of this one leg x, so that's 3x feet. And if you want to label the triangle, you can. This leg is x, let's say, and this one, the hypotenuse is 3x, and the other leg is 128 feet. So we apply the Pythagorean theorem, we square the length of the hypotenuse, so the term 3x squared, that's equal to the sum of the squares of the lengths of the two legs. So that's equal to x squared plus 128 squared. Okay, then when you square the term 3x, you get 9x to the second equals x squared plus 128 squared. Then subtract x squared from both sides, and we get 8x squared equals 128 squared. Okay, well, with a calculator, this is not hard to do. If you don't have a calculator, you can still figure it out. I'm going to divide both sides by 8, but I'm going to replace 128 squared with 128 times 128, and I'm dividing that by 8. And 8 goes into 128 16 times. So 8 goes into 128 16 times. So x squared is 16 times 128. And 128 is 16 times 8. So we can think of x squared equals 16 times 128 as 16 times 16 times 8. And then when I take this positive square root, x is equal to the square root of 16 times 16 times 8. Well, the square root of 16 is 4. The square root of 16 is 4 again. We can simplify the square root of 8. Oops, square root of 8. So up here, I'll finish this. 4 times 4 is 16. The square root of 8 is 2 times the square root of 2. And so x equals 32 times the square root of 2. That's the exact answer, but of course you have to use a calculator to get, and then round it to 2 decimal places. Okay, the next problem, simplify, expressing answers using positive exponents only. Okay, one option before applying the outer exponent 2, one option is just to first simplify what's inside the parentheses. So I'll rewrite what we have. I'm going to simplify what's inside the parentheses first. Okay, so inside the parentheses, this factor 6 stays in the denominator. And then x to the second divided by x to the negative 1 is equivalent to x to the positive 3 in the numerator. And y to the negative 3 over y to the third is equivalent to y to the positive 6 in the denominator. And now we can apply the outer exponent. So x to the third to the second is x to the 2 times 3, or x to the 6th. 6 to the second is 36. And then y to the second, or y to the 6th to the second is y to the 12th. So this is our simplified answer. Okay, the next page This one says completely factor the polynomial 9x to the third minus 24x squared y plus 16x y to the second. Well, the first step in factoring, if the greatest common factor is something besides 1, factor that out. So x is a common factor. That's the greatest common factor. So factor x out, and we're left with 9x to the second minus 24xy plus 16y to the second. We can factor further. 9x squared minus 24xy plus 16y to the second. So this can be factored even though we have more than one variable. This is a trinomial that can be factored. So if we try the AC method, we can multiply 9 times 16, which is 144. And then two integers that have a product of 144 and a sum of negative 24, or negative 12 and negative 12. Okay, so we're using the AC method to factor the trinomial. So on the side here, we'll factor 9x squared minus 24xy plus 16y to the second. So we transform it into a quadrinomial. We're going to replace minus 24xy with minus 12xy minus 12xy. And then we'll factor by grouping. Out of the first two terms, the greatest common factor is 3x. And when we factor 3x out of the first two terms, we're left with 3x minus 4y. The middle operator is subtraction. So out of the third and fourth terms, we're going to factor out the negative of the greatest common factor. Well, the greatest common factor involves 4y, so minus 4y. And then negative 12xy divided by negative 4y is positive 3x. And 16y to the second divided by negative 4y is negative 4y. So these binomials match, 3x minus 4 and 3x minus 4. That's what's supposed to happen. And when we factor that out, we get 3x minus 4y times 3x minus 4y. So the complete factorization includes this factor of x. So we write x times 3x minus 4y times 3x minus 4y. So remember, when the two factors of a trinomial are identical, 3x minus 4y and 3x minus 4y, that means that the trinomial is a perfect square trinomial. Okay, in the next problem, a chemist needs to mix a solution that is 11% iodine with one that is 47% iodine to obtain 800 liters of a mixture that is 22% iodine. Find the number of liters of the 11% solution needed for the mixture. So here's in brackets, a little bit more information. solve algebraically using a system of two linear equations. Okay, well, we have two quantities. I'll use x and y. So I'm going to use x for the number of liters. That is 11% iodine. And I'm going to use y to represent the number of liters. That is 47% iodine. Okay, so the chemist, he's going to take x liters from one container that's 11% iodine and combine it with y liters from a different container that's 47% iodine. And when he mixes them together, he's going to have a total of 800 liters. So x plus y is equal to 800 liters. And the mixture is going to be 22% iodine. So in the second equation, we use the percentages. So if x liters is 11% iodine, then 0.11 times x represents the amount of pure iodine. And then we add that to 0.47 times y. And the 800 liters is 22%, so we multiply 0.22 times 800. Okay, so here is our system of two linear equations. We could use the substitution method or the elimination method. So I think what I'll do is I'll use the elimination method, and I'm going to multiply both sides of the top equation by negative 0.11. Okay, so when I multiply every term on both sides of the top equation by negative 0.11, I'll get negative 0.11x minus 0.11y. And then on the right-hand side, negative 0.11 times 800. And we'll add that to the second equation, 0.11x plus 0.47y equals 0.22 times 800. When we add these two equations, the x variable eliminates. Negative 0.11y plus 0.47y is positive 0.36y. And up here, well, if I just leave it in factored form, negative 0.11 times 800 plus 0.22 times 800 is equal to 0.11 times 800. Uh, 0.11 times 800 is just 88. And so y is equal to 88 divided by 0.36. So you can use a calculator to get a decimal answer for that. And then the x quantity is 800 minus y, so x is 800 minus 88 divided by 0.36. Okay, so I'll leave the rest of that for you to do. Just key those into your calculator and simplify. Okay, the next problem for the circle x squared plus 8x plus y squared minus 2y equals 47. Give its equation in standard form. Okay, to get it into standard form, we have to complete the square twice. So for x squared plus 8x, we have to add a number to both sides so that we get a perfect square trinomial. So the number is going to be found by taking 1/2 of 8 and squaring it. 1/2 of 8 is 4. 4 squared is 16, so we add 16 to both sides of the equation. For y squared minus 2y, 1/2 of -2 is -1. When you square -1, you get +1, so we add 1 to both sides. And then the next step is the standard equation. X squared plus 8x plus 16 is x plus 4 squared. And then we add that to y squared minus 2y plus 1, which is y minus 1 squared. And on the right-hand side, 47 plus 16 is 63. 63 plus 1 is 64. Okay, this is all that you're supposed to do. Just give the standard form. But as an aside, be able also to identify the center and the radius. The center of that circle is the ordered pair -4, +1, and the radius is the square root of 64, or 8. Okay, number 25. Consider the line through the point 2, -9, that is perpendicular to the line y equals 1/3 x plus 7. Give the slope-intercept equation for the perpendicular line. Okay, first, the slope of the perpendicular line is the negative reciprocal of the slope of the given line. Okay, so the slope of the perpendicular line is the negative reciprocal of 1/3, which is -3/1, or just -3. Okay, that perpendicular line passes through the point 2, -9. We're supposed to end up with the slope-intercept form. That's the y equals mx plus b form. But as an intermediate step, we can write the point-slope form. The point-slope form is y minus y1, so y minus -9 equals the slope, -3, times the quantity x minus x1. And then we do algebra and arithmetic because we want to get it into slope-intercept form. Y minus -9 is y plus 9. And on the right-hand side, -3 times the quantity x minus 2 is -3x plus 6. And then we subtract 9 from both sides, and we get y equals -3x minus 3. That is the slope-intercept form. Okay, the next page. Solve the equation 5 times the square root of x equals x minus 6. We want to solve for x. We see that x is inside a square root. So that means at some point we want to square both sides so that we can get the variable x out of the square root. Okay, so we can start by squaring both sides. Square the left-hand side and square the right-hand side. But don't forget what it means to square something. Squaring something means you multiply that something by itself. So on the left-hand side, we have 5 times the square root of x times 5 times the square root of x. On the right-hand side, we have x minus 6 times x minus 6. On the left-hand side, rearranging the factors, we can multiply 5 times 5 to get 25. And the square root of x times the square root of x is just x. And then on the right-hand side, x minus 6 times x minus 6. X times x is x squared, and then minus x times 6 is minus 6x. And then we multiply negative 6 times the binomial x minus 6. So we get another minus 6x. And then negative 6 times negative 6 is positive 36. And when we simplify the right-hand side, we get x squared minus 12x plus 36. Okay, so what we have is a quadratic equation. So we'll subtract 25x from both sides. And when we subtract 25x from both sides, we get x squared minus 37x plus 36 equals 0. Okay, we can always use the quadratic formula, but this one can be solved by factoring. So we can use the AC method. 1 times 36 is 36. So two numbers that have a product of positive 36 and a sum of negative 37 are negative 1 and negative 36. So this factors pretty nicely. X minus 1 and x minus 36 are the two factors. The quadratic equation has two solutions, x equals 1 and x equals 36. But remember what we started with. We started with that equation, 5 times the square root of x equals x minus 6. So we need to check the answers. You can pretty much tell by looking, but we'll go through we'll write it down. So when we check x equals 1, we get 5 times the square root of 1 equals 1 minus 6. The square root of 1 is 1, so 5 times 1 equals negative 5 is false. So x equals 1 is not a solution. When we check x equals positive 36, 5 times the square root of 36 equals 36 minus 6. The square root of 36 is 6, so 5 times 6 equals 30. This is true. Okay, So x equals 36 is the only solution. So the only solution. Okay, in the next problem, we have a work problem. Working together, Fred and Tom can clean the garage in 53 minutes. Working alone, Tom takes 19 minutes longer to clean the garage than Fred would take working alone. So how long would it take Fred to clean the garage by herself? Okay, so round to the nearest minute, set up an equation and solve it. Okay, they work together, and then they can work separately. Okay, if they work together, remember equations have the form rate times time equals 1 for work problems. When they work together, the overall working rate is Fred's rate plus Tom's rate multiplied by 53 minutes. They can clean one garage. So just to expound a little bit, R sub f represents Fred's rate, and R sub t represents Tom's rate. Okay, then we want to write rate times time equals 1 equations for Fred and Tom. So in the second sentence, it says working alone, Tom takes 19 minutes longer to clean the garage than Fred would take working alone. So I'm going to pick, this is not the only way to do it, but I'm going to pick T to represent the amount of time it takes Fred to clean the garage. So capital T is the number of minutes it takes Fred to clean the garage. Okay, and for Tom, since Tom takes 19 minutes longer, Tom's time is T plus 19. So for Tom, his rate multiplied by T plus 19 equals 1. If we solve each of those equations for the rates, Fred's rate plus Tom's rate is 1 over 53. Fred's rate is 1 over capital T. Tom's rate is 1 over T plus 19. Okay, we want an equation whose only variable is T. So in this equation, replace Fred's rate with 1 over T, replace Tom's rate with 1 over T plus 19. So we get this equation, 1 over T plus 1 over T plus 19 equals 1 over 53. Okay, the least common multiple of the denominators, or the least common denominator, is 53 times t plus 19. And then we multiply each of the terms on both sides by the least common denominator. When you multiply the least common denominator by 1 over t, the t's cancel. So we get 53 times t plus 19. Then multiply the least common denominator by 1 over t plus 19. The t plus 19 factors cancel, so we get plus 53t. On the right-hand side, the least common denominator multiplied by 1 over 53. The 53's cancel, and we get t times t plus 19. Hey, this is a quadratic equation, so multiply everything out. 53t plus 53 times 19 plus 53t equals t to the second plus 19t. On the left-hand side, combining like terms, 53t plus 53t is 106t. And let's see, 530, 1060, 1007, I think, is what you get when you multiply 53 times 19. You can correct me if I did that wrong. And then we'll write the equation in standard form. We'll make the left-hand side 0 by subtracting 106t from both sides and subtracting 1007. So I'll put the algebraic terms on the left-hand side. So t to the second, and then minus 87t minus 1007 equals 0. Hey, here just use the quadratic formula, and be careful with the arithmetic. So we'll get t equals the negative of negative 87 plus and minus the square root of the number negative 87 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 1007, all divided by 2 times 1. You can ignore the solution that you get by subtracting, because that subtracting will make the answer negative, but a negative answer doesn't work in this case. So I'll leave the rest of that for you to do, and round your answer to the nearest minute, so the nearest whole number. Okay, let's move on to the next problem. Solve the system. So in other words, this is a system of 2 linear equations, and then after solving it, give the answer as an ordered pair. Well, we have 2 basic methods, well, 2 algebraic methods. Either the substitution method or the addition method, also called the elimination method. So maybe the substitution method will work if you solve the bottom equation for y. we can just subtract 9x from both sides. So I'll use substitution. Solve the bottom equation for y. We get y equals negative 9x minus 32. And then in the top equation, replace y with negative 9x minus 32. And then do the algebra and arithmetic. So we'll get 2x. 9 times negative 9x that becomes minus 81x. And then minus 9 times 32, that's minus 288. And then the right-hand side is 28. Okay, so for the next step, we can simplify 2x minus 81x, which is negative 79x. And we'll add 288 to both sides, and we'll get negative 79x equals 316. And then divide both sides by negative 79, x equals 316 divided by negative 79, and that looks like negative 4. Okay, so if x is negative 4, we can also use substitution to find y. So y equals negative 9 times negative 4 minus 32. Negative 9 times negative 4 is 36. 36 minus 32 is positive 4. Okay, it says give the solution as an ordered pair. So the ordered pair solution, xy, is in left parenthesis, negative 4, comma, 4, right parenthesis. If you're nervous about the answer, you can always check it. So we can do this visually. In the top equation, replace x with negative 4 and replace y with 4. 2 times negative 4 is negative 8. 9 times 4 is 36. And sure enough, negative 8 plus 36 equals 28. So it works in the top equation. In the bottom equation, 9 times negative 4 plus 4. 9 times negative 4 is negative 36. Negative 36 plus 4 equals negative 32 is also correct. So we checked that, and it worked out. Okay, we'll get started on the next problem. Solve the inequality 2x over x minus 7 is less than or equal to 1. Give the solution set in algebraic notation and interval notation. Well, for rational, this is a rational inequality. The left-hand side is a rational expression. For rational inequalities, we want one side to be 0. So that means we have to subtract 1 from both sides and then simplify the left-hand side. So now that we've subtracted 1 from both sides, we need the left-hand side to be a single rational expression. Okay, so the least common denominator is x minus 7. So this will become 2x over x minus 7 minus minus 1 in the form x minus 7 divided by x minus 7. So as long as x does not equal 7, x minus 7 divided by x minus 7 is 1. So we're just subtracting 1. Okay, the next part, though, you'll have to make sure you're careful with a common denominator of x minus 7. The numerator is 2x minus x, which is x. But we're also subtracting negative 7, which is plus 7. Okay, so now we have a rational inequality set up the way that we want it. We're out of time today, so we'll pick up from here tomorrow. It looks like we're almost finished with the paper version of the sample final exam. So I will come up with other problems and send you an email with a PDF so that we can review more after the practice final. But that is all for today. Morning. How are you today?
I'm doing okay. How are you doing?
Not too bad.